One. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the BEAMathon. This is going to be a really fun and exciting workshop. I'm really excited for this. And it's how to build your network and connections with Sophie from The Conversationalist. So before we get into introducing our amazing speaker, we're actually going to go ahead with our first prize opportunity. Y'all know the drill. So all you have to do is just follow Beam Community on Instagram. And then at any point within this workshop before it ends, just feel free to maybe take out your phone and just take a picture of you at the workshop, or you can take a picture of the workshop by yourself and just caption it like, hey, I'm at the How to Build Your Network and Connections workshop with Sophie from The Conversationalist. And we'll pick a couple winners to win some stickers. I'm gonna throw it. Oh, yep. So some stickers right there. And yeah, so at any point, just feel free to tag Beam Community in that. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Sophie take the floor and introduce herself. So feel free to go ahead and share a presentation if you have and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Skylar. Hi, everyone. So great to virtually meet all of you. My name is Sophie, and I'm so excited for today's workshop. So let's get into it. We're going to have so much fun. I cannot wait to share all of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years for networking for success, and I cannot wait. And my biggest thing whenever I host any sort of workshop is I want this to be a conversation. So for anyone who has thoughts, ideas, responses, please keep this chat popping off throughout the workshop so we can stay in touch, get connected, because I want to hear your thoughts more than what I'm sharing on the screen. So I guess just starting out, my name is Sophie Beren. I am a unifier. I feel like I was put on this earth to bring people together, to have conversations that matter, and I am on a mission to make the world feel smaller by having conversations that matter. And the way that I do this is through my platform, The Conversationalist. We are the go-to destination for Gen Z, empowering all of you, the next generation, to have important conversations, break open our echo chambers, and unify the world. So today, I am going to walk you all through a presentation on how to network for success. And I have 5 tips that hopefully you'll walk away from today's workshop feeling energized, inspired, and ready to go network and build relationships in the best possible way. So first and foremost, I want to take us through tip number 1, my favorite tip of all, which is in any interaction you have with any person you're networking with, lead with who you are. I think so often we introduce ourselves with what we do. Like, hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the founder and CEO of blank, blank, and blank, or I am a student. I am a this, that, and so on and so forth. But if we can align with what makes us us, I believe that that is the core to any interaction you have when it comes to networking. And so I hope you saw that in my intro. I wanted to start off by saying that I am a unifier. This is what sets me apart from the rest. This is who I am at my core. And I love to share the things that make me, me. And so I don't know if everyone knew this, but nowadays, our generation has an attention span of 8 seconds. So when you're starting a new relationship, you have 8 seconds to make that first impression. So make it count. There are so many students out there. There are so many entrepreneurs out there, but what makes you you? I was so lucky that I had a mentor who led me on this self-discovery, personal branding journey, who helped me discover who I am. And that was how I figured out that at my core, I am a unifier. And so I always make sure to state who I am, and then I unify by doing X, Y, and Z, which is my platform, The Conversationalist. So that's a little bit of a tip and a trick for how to start that relationship with who you are and not what you do. So next up, and also, how's everyone feeling? Does anyone resonate? Maybe pop in the chat. Have you experienced this before, where you've met someone and they say what they do and it's a little bit redundant or impersonal? Maybe just drop a me in the chat. I'd love to see who can relate to that. Amazing. What's up, Laura, Frank, Rosie, Selena? So great to hear that you all resonate, because this is at the core of networking. Lead with who you are and not what you do. So next up on deck, we have tip number 2, which is be human and be genuine. I am such a believer that as human beings, we have so much in common with one another. And sometimes what we fail to do when we're networking and building relationships is to lean into those commonalities that we have with other people, which connects us. We at the end of the day connect with one another through our shared humanity. And if we can lean into what makes us human, we will have so much success with our networking. And so when you're reaching out to meet someone new and to form a new relationship, try to find what you have in common with that person. It could be anything from a shared hometown to a shared alma mater to a shared favorite food. And when you're reaching out, be as specific as you can with that person about why you're reaching out. Lead with that commonality and tell that person exactly why you're reaching out and why they should give you the time of day. And at the end of the day, be yourself. We talked about leading with who you are. And if you can continue to be who you are and be authentically you in those interactions, you'll succeed. So that's my second tip is be human, be genuine. And I wanted to give a quick, fun little story as an example of this. I'm going to try to throw personal stories in throughout my conversation with all of you today to really bring it home. So once upon a time, I was starting the conversationalist and I had a dream mentor. So just by show of hands in the chat or with the reactions, who's heard of Bustle Media? They're a huge publication. They also are a huge media group. They also have Elite Daily. They're a huge, huge media conglomerate. So when I was just starting out, I really wanted to become BFFs with the editorial editor-in-chief, whose name is Kate Ward. And I had no clue how to get in touch with her. I just manifested it into the universe that I wanted to become her friend, and maybe she would mentor me and maybe even be an advisor to my new company. And so what I did is I did a ton of research on her, and I stumbled upon this random podcast episode where she gave an interview telling these two entrepreneurs that her favorite food was burrata. She was a cheese gal. I'm a cheese gal. And so what I did is after that interview, I reached out to her, essentially asking her to go try Murray's Cheese's new burrata mac and cheese with me. And because I led with that human interaction that showed her that I was listening to who she is and her interests, she took me up on that. And we got coffee together. We shared our love of cheese. And before I knew it, she was advising me on my company and has now become a mentor. So show that person that you're listening, do your homework, feel free to stalk someone to the point where you can find that commonality and be yourself in that interaction. So that's number two. And can anyone just pop into the chat with a me again if you also love burrata or mac and cheese? I would just love to see some love from the audience. Amazing. Oh, yes, Melinda, Sophie, Chris, Megan, Laura. So good to see we have some fellow cheese lovers in the house. So that's my first story on how to make sure that you are leading with who you are as a human being to build those initial relationships. Sophie, I love that cheese pun. Appreciate you. So tip number 3, go the extra mile. When I network, I try to be that person who can stand out above the rest. So if you are trying to build a relationship with someone from scratch, be that person who writes a thank you note. Be that person who follows up less than 24 hours after your interaction. Be that person to stand out in the relationship, quote unquote, market. Because if you can really go that extra mile in that new relationship, someone will be more willing to put that energy back into you. So if you tell someone that you are going to put them in touch with another person, if you're going to give them a review on their podcast, if you're going to help them and give some advice, make sure that you follow through and be that person that goes the extra mile. So I'll give another quick fun story. So I don't know if anyone here has heard of Katie Storino, but she is an incredible blogger, influencer, podcaster who is all about the size inclusivity space. I have been such a fan of her for years, and I wanted to get her on my podcast. So what I did was I sent her publicist an email and I built that initial relationship. But at the beginning, I was a nobody. I was just starting out. Who was Katie Storino to trust me to let her be on my podcast? So what I did was I followed up weeks and weeks and weeks on end with her publicist and kept giving her reasons why Katie should come on my podcast. And in those repeated interactions, I was able to start building trust with the publicist who was keeping me in the back of her mind as she would pitch this to Katie. So next up, her publicist asked me to make a deck. She said, Sophie, if you can show me why Katie should be on your podcast, prove it to me, write a deck. So within the next 3 hours, I put together a deck because she said she needed it by the end of the day. I went for it and I made sure to position the value that my podcast would give Katie and how she could reach Gen Zers, how she could spread her positive message. And it got to a yes. So next thing I knew, I was at her apartment, hanging out with her dogs, having a great time recording this podcast with her. And at the end of the meeting, oh, and great question, Selena. A deck is like this, like a PowerPoint, something that you could put together to showcase your value or the ask in a very visual way. So at the end of the interaction, Katie actually shared with me that she was launching her podcast and she had no clue where to start. And I had so many tips and tricks for her. So she asked me if I could share that podcast advice with her. And as soon as I left her apartment, I put together a presentation and sent her those tips and tricks. So I followed through on that question that she asked me. And in that interaction, I was able to give her that immediate value. And I think that is really what sets you apart in the networking game, to go that extra mile and follow through and show up for the people that you're building relationships with. And Skylar, I don't know what the formula is, but I see we have some hands raised. Should I wait until the end?
Oh, you can feel free to call on them if you want throughout the workshop. Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Well, unfortunately, from my presentation standpoint, I can't see people's names, so I won't know how to call on you. But I see someone's hand is raised. For some reason, it's just not showing me names. I'm so sorry.
Can I just ask my question?
Yes. Oh, now I see your name. Victory. What's up?
Okay. Hi. Okay. How do you keep track of in your network? You said a lot of things about working with different people, but how do you keep your network? Is a lot of influencers like to say.
That's such a great question. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit as we go, but I like to have a master database of my relationships. So it might sound a little calculated, but I'm an organized person. I love Airtable, which is essentially like Google Sheets. And I tend to write down every single person's name who I've come into contact with, and I've emailed, I've met in person, and I keep a relationships spreadsheet. And here is the crazy part, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but I actually have a relationships cadence. So for example, Katie Storino, again, she's an icon. I have now put into my calendar specific dates when to reach out and follow up to make sure that I'm continuing that relationship with her. And I'll say exactly how you can do this in a little bit, but an easy way to do this is a birthday. If you know when that person's birthday is, reach out. Tell them that they're top of mind for you, keep that relationship going, and have some sort of ongoing spreadsheet so you can remember who should stay top of mind, who you should be following up with, and maybe just jotting down some notes and ideas about how to follow up and build that connection. Victory, did that answer your question? Cool.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Amazing. No, thank you. If anyone has questions, feel free to hop in. Sophie, again, with the brilliant cheese pun. I am such a fan. If anyone has questions, feel free to stop me at any time, but I'll keep going through so we can get through these 5 tips. All right. So tip number 4, add as much value as you possibly can. The easiest way that you can do this is anytime you're building a new relationship, whether it's a friend, whether it's an all-star, whether it's a thought leader, an entrepreneur, the number one question you need to make sure to ask before you end that phone call or that interaction is, how can I support you? This is the number one thing that I ask in every meeting. And even if that person doesn't have anything in mind, it positioned you as a giver. And the key to building relationships is to give and give and give without expecting anything in return. And you never know, one day down the road, that could come full circle. So always ask, how can I support you? Literally say it as that, and leave space for that person to share. And what you'll find is that person might come back to you and say, well, how can I support you? And that's such an easy way to create that value exchange, which is the key to any relationship. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea of value being monetary, but I want you to know that value can look like so many different things. It could be advice, it could be putting together some resources, it could be putting someone in touch with someone else. So offer value and support in any way that you can. And this quote here is something that I love to channel: be what people need instead of asking for what you need, and you never know what could come back. So another quick story, a crazy story. I have some wild networking stories to share with all of you today, but I think this example showcases the importance of giving value. So show of hands, who here has heard of Talkspace? Talkspace is a virtual therapy app. They're amazing. Yes, Selena, Victory, we see some hands raised. I love Talkspace. So a few years ago, I reached out to them on Instagram. I saw they were having a summit in New York City, which is where I live. And I reached out to the Instagram account and I said, "Hey, I saw you have a summit coming up. Is there anything I can do to help? I have a lot of expertise in the mental health space. I could connect you with anyone. Let me know how I can help support." And before I knew it, the person who ran the account came back to me and offered me a free ticket to their summit. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to put myself out there. I walked into this summit at the New York Times building in Times Square, not knowing a single person. I walked in cold by myself, wanted to be a sponge and see what the day could come. So I started attending the main sessions. And all of a sudden, I see this panel and I see this amazing woman talking about student mental health. And I really resonated with her. And after the session was over, I walked up to her in the main hall, had no clue who she was, and just struck up a conversation with her and asked her right there in that moment how I could help support her. And the craziest thing happened. This woman was talking to me all about her background and her college experience and how we could collaborate. We were just getting to know each other. And in that moment, her phone was about to die and she needed a phone charger. And in that moment, I had a phone charger. So I ran back into the main room. I grabbed my phone charger. I helped her. And in that moment, she was so appreciative that she then follows up that by saying, you know what? I'm about to go backstage and hang out with Michael Phelps before he comes onto the main stage. He's the next speaker. Do you want to come with me? And it was the craziest moment. I didn't know what I did to end up in this scenario, but it's such a perfect example of giving and giving, putting yourself out there, striking up conversations with people, and you never know what the universe could have lined up for you. So I went backstage, I took the photos of her with Michael Phelps, and then she let me take a photo with him as well. And I would have never known that in that moment, I was watching the panel with Michael Phelps from backstage instead of the audience. So that's just another example about how you can put yourself out there, give, and you never know what the universe has in store for you. So that's tip number 4, give, and add value. So last but not least, tip number 5, play the long game. I think something that I wish that I would have known earlier on in my career is that when you strike up a relationship and you reach out to form a new connection, sometimes we are so eager to get that first ask or get that person to do something for us that we end up ruining that relationship. And I think the biggest key, which is why I have this as tip number 5 to building relationships, is play the long game. This means that if you start a relationship, oh, so sorry about that. You saw my YouTube presence probably. I was getting a call, sorry. With playing the long game, this means that you are starting a relationship with the intention of being in that relationship long term, not just that short one-time ask. So if you want to get someone on your podcast, you want to get someone on your Instagram, you want to build a relationship, you want to mentor, start that relationship with the intention of keeping them in your life for the long term. Relationships take time. They don't happen overnight. And I think if we can make sure that in those first interactions we have with a person, we position them with value, like we spoke about, we be ourselves, and we don't ask right away, that relationship has the sustainability for the long term. So in that moment, prioritize the person. After you've had that initial interaction and you've built that connection, stay top of mind. So an easy way to do this is to interact with them on social media. It's such an easy thing to do. Let's say you form a relationship with someone who maybe is a bit, quote unquote, out of your league. First of all, know that that person is not out of your league. But what you can do is start supporting them in everyday interactions. Comment on their Instagram posts, send them a happy birthday email like I was just sharing with Victory. Stay top of mind. And the more that you can prioritize that relationship outside of that short-term ask, the more that person is going to stay in your life for the long run. And then when you really have an ask down the road, it will be that much more meaningful because you have an actual relationship with that person. And so the last story that I'll share, which is another wild one. So just by show of hands or typing me in the chat, who here watches The Bachelor? Anyone? Do we have any Bachelor fans? Okay, great. Skylar. Yes. Leah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So get ready. This is such a fun story. So this is my quick example about how to build relationships for the long game. So just now, if you watched Tayshia's season of The Bachelor, Ben Smith, who you see up here on stage, this gorgeous man, was the runner-up of the season. So a couple of months ago, I guess it was maybe 2 months ago, 3 days after the finale aired, I found myself out to dinner, and I am walking through the restaurant. The hostess is seating my entire family, and we look over, and guess who is seated next to us at dinner? Ben Smith. And in that moment, he was 3 days off of the finale. America is talking about him. He is a celebrity. And in that moment, I wanted to meet him because I was so inspired by his mental health journey on The Bachelor. He really exemplifies what it means to be a conversationalist, opening up meaningful conversations about mental health, even on national TV. And throughout the night, so many people were walking up to him and taking selfies and being in his face. And I could tell that in that moment, that was not the right plan of action. I wanted to build a relationship with Ben, so down the road, he could potentially come on The Conversationalist, be on our podcast, and be a part of our family at TC. So throughout the night, I was just noticing and kind of occasionally checking in with him across the room to make sure he was still there. And what I decided to do, instead of walking up to him and taking a selfie, was I actually asked our waiter to send another round of drinks to his table. And in that moment, I was able to establish more of a professional relationship with Ben, that before I knew it, once he received that next round of drinks, he came over to our table and he started a conversation with me. And in that moment, I was able to talk to him from more of a meaningful standpoint about why I reached out, why I'm inspired by him, and how I would love for him to come empower all of Generation Z through The Conversationalist. And now he's coming on my podcast. So I think as long as you can position relationships from that long-term standpoint, a selfie is nice, but at the end of the day, building that long-term relationship is what matters. So be intentional with your ask, take your time, and really make sure that you're not rushing to form a relationship and you're giving it the time that it needs, while also not missing your moment, right? Like if Ben had got up and left the restaurant, then I would have missed it. My whole family the whole night was like, Sophie, let it go. You don't need to do this. You're embarrassing us. Don't do it. But I'm such a risk taker, and I had to do it in that moment. So don't be afraid to stand out and don't miss your moment, but at the same time, be intentional. So thank you, Selena. I thought so as well. Thanks, Shraddha. Really appreciate all of your kind words. So with that in mind, after some crazy networking stories and walking you through steps 1 through 5, I wanted to walk through some tangible tips that you can walk away with today to really take your networking to the next level. So step number 1, I am the biggest proponent of the cold email. Just by show of hands or a me in the chat, who else has ever sent someone a cold email? Okay, we've seen a lot of people here. Ashley, Rosie, Frank, Toby, amazing, amazing, amazing. So the cold email, in my mind, is the way to win. But here is where people get it wrong. When you send a cold email to someone, leave them wanting more. When I first started out, I would send an essay in my email, giving them all of my background, essentially everything I'm asking of them. And it got to the point where if someone was receiving that email, they're probably not even reading it. So the key to a cold email is, again, position your value, lead with who you are, and ask that person to essentially have some sort of conversation with you, but leave them wanting more. If they have questions, they will ask them, but make sure that you write that cold email in a short, concise way. And on top of that, this tip really helped me when I was starting out. You may already know this, but I want to say it again. If you want to set up a phone call or some sort of actionable conversation with an individual, give them timeframes to pick from. Offer them 3 to 5 slots in your calendar that they can select. Because if you just say, hey, would love to connect, are you available in the coming weeks? Let me know, Sophie. There's no clear path for them to say yes. But if I share 3 to 5 time slots that I'm free and ask them to pick one, they will either A, pick one, or B, suggest other ones if they're not available. So list those very specific times and someone is much more likely to say yes. So next, DMs are key. However, if you are reaching out to someone who is a public figure or someone who might not be checking their DM inbox, make sure that you pair that DM with a comment. So let's say I'm reaching out to Skylar. I've never met her before, which actually this happened in real time. I DM'd Skylar without knowing her at all. What I would do is I would send Skylar a DM, keeping it on the short side again, that is key, and maybe adding a comment on one of her latest posts, maybe something that resonated with me, saying, hey, Skylar, so inspired by all that you do, would love to connect, just sent you a DM. And that person is much more likely to see your comment than just the DM that's getting pushed to their request inbox. So that's another key tip if you're trying to reach out to someone. If you're going to DM, pair it with a comment. Next up, I've tried this a few times and have found it to be super successful, but don't be afraid to cold call someone. If you're calling someone's office, if you're looking for a mentor, feel free to call them up. The worst that can happen is that they're unavailable and you ask for another time where you can speak with them. Or second, you leave a voicemail and you share who you are. They get to hear your voice and it establishes that connection. So that's tip number 3. Don't be afraid to cold call. And as you look back on the first 3 tips with the emailing, the DMing, the commenting, and the cold call, don't be afraid to send voice notes. Voice notes are my favorite thing in the entire world. So if you're reaching out to someone via DM, maybe not email, but if you're reaching out or texting someone for the first time, don't be afraid to actually record a voice memo. Share who you are, add that third dimension to your personality, and they're much more likely to respond. So next up here, my biggest tip when it comes to taking networking to the next level is join communities. So all of you here are clearly a part of the BEAM community, and I'm sure you've been able to find meaningful relationships and friendships from BEAM. This is what we are all about at The Conversationalist. We are a global Gen Z community, essentially providing a place for young people to come together, become friends, talk about the things that really matter going on in the world, and supporting what one another is working on outside of the community. And so find communities that have opportunities channels, self-promo channels, and ways to get involved, because so many opportunities could lie at communities. So this is what I would recommend. If you're not a part of any outside of BEAM, the more the merrier. There are so many ways that you can connect and find new people, break open your echo chamber, and build relationships with people who you may have never met otherwise. So 10 out of 10, community is a place to win. So with all of this being said, I hope that these were some tangible tips to take away. And of course, last but not least, follow up. I think the people who try to network and take all of these tips into consideration, but end up quote unquote failing, are the people who don't follow up. I can't even tell you the amount of times we've had to send follow-up emails to people, but it works. The more you can email them and stay top of mind, obviously don't spam someone, but if you can take all of these tips into account, stay top of mind and actually follow up, that person is much more likely to say yes because they know that you're persistent and that you really are asking for the right reasons. So those would be kind of 5 tangible tips taking away from today's conversation. And remember that there is no sky, there is no limit. If you think someone is out of reach, they are not. Go out there, create these relationships for yourselves, and at the end of the day, make sure that you lead with who you are. If you take one thing away from today's conversation about networking and building relationships, remember this. You are only as good as the people who know you. At the end of your life, the things that will have really mattered in your lifetime are the people that you know and that you've built relationships with, and that's how people will learn more about you. There are so many times that we think about networking as involving ourselves reaching out to others, but think about networking that happens when you're not even there. Maybe, walking away from today's conversation and I'm thinking about an amazing resource for college and high school students and someone wants to get involved, maybe I'll tell them about Skylar and the BEAM community, and networking can happen outside of yourself and that individual. So lead with who you are, establish those strong relationships, because at the end of the day, you are only as good as the people who know you. So last but certainly not least, make sure that when you are reaching out to network with someone or something, I know I said add as much value as possible, don't rush the ask, but I would also say don't be afraid to ask. I think every single person who builds new relationships, we can sometimes be hesitant that we're not adding enough value, we don't have value to give, but in that moment, you could give so much value to someone simply by being there to listen or aligning what you could give them based on that person's value as well. So I give these quick 3 examples on my last slide because over the past month, I was able to interview Dr. Oz. I met the incredible Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, and I was able to get a contributing position at the HuffPost, all from asking when the time was right. So I think it's just an important lesson at the end of the day to position your asks in a way that adds value to that individual. So for example, Dr. Oz, he is doing incredible work in the healthcare field, and we established an opportunity for Dr. Oz to essentially be spotlighted towards Gen Z to showcase his incredible work in the healthcare fields. And by positioning this ask in a way that resonated with him and his goals, he was much more likely to say yes. So when you position these asks or these initial connections in a way that will really add value to that person and what they're doing and building, there's no way that you can't succeed. So with that, I'm going to wrap up here. Don't be afraid to increase your own luck. Send these cold emails, send these cold DMs, and next time you reach out to someone from scratch, I hope that you can channel some of these tips and tricks to make sure that you lead with who you are, you give, you go that extra mile, and at the end of the day, you can lead with who you are and not what you do. So thank you all so much. I can't wait to answer all of your questions. And here are just some ways that we can connect and keep the conversation going. So thank you all so much.
Yes,
Hi, I have a
thank
quick
you so much, Sophie, for that. Can everyone give a hype, a thank you in the chat for that presentation? That was awesome. Very interactive and stuff like that. A lot of amazing tips. So we can go on to questions and stuff.
Can I give a verbal thank you? Because that was the best session that I've been to. Thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful.
Sophie, I would have to say that I love it. This is actually what I need.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy, y'all. I just want to add value to all of you. So if there's more that I can do outside of today's presentation, hit me up. I would love to get you all connected. And I tried really to focus today on how I could add value to all of you. So I didn't talk a lot about my work with the conversationalist, but if you're looking for another community to really network and build relationships with other young change makers who are literally changing the world, join our community. It's not a time commitment. It's just a resource so you can connect and talk about things that matter with other young people. So if there's an easy way that I can add value after today, it would definitely be to join TC. And I can't wait to connect with all of you. So
I have a question.
Sophie, to test, test the effectiveness of your methods. Since you offer this, I'm just gonna run like a little experiment after this session to see if it really works.
yeah,
I will also be doing that.
I can't tell who's speaking right now because of my screen, but I am so here for it. All the power.
Yes, it's Frank. It's
Frank, hello. Yeah, please. Let me know what you end up testing. I'm happy to give feedback. But wishing you the best of luck.
Let's just say it involves someone in this call.
Yes.
Great. If that's me, I'm here for it. If anyone, actually, that could be a good call to action. If anyone wants to connect with me, try to put some of these tips into practice. Like, send me a message with something that I actually said that resonated with you. I have received far too many messages from people that say, hey, Sophie, would love to connect. Or, hey, Sophie, great to meet you. But they never actually follow through with something specific. And that was one of my biggest tips today. Share something that you actually resonated with, something specific. And I can always give you feedback, but I'm also just so excited to connect with all of you. So I'm honored. Thanks, Frank.
Hi, Sophie. I have a quick question.
Yeah, what's up, Ahmad?
Okay. So reaching out to like Dr. Oz or something like that, what did you do to reach out? Did you just go on their website and go in their contact form, or did you do a specific? How did you reach out to them?
All of the above. I would start with going to their Instagram profile and see if they have their email listed in their bio. Sometimes they even have a phone number, and I would try both of those first. And then what I would do is do some research, make someone like Dr. Oz, and I learned this. People manage his entire life from start to finish. He has a team that does everything for him. So it doesn't make as much impact to reach out to him directly. It makes sense to reach out to his team. So do some research, figure out who the publicists are, who the managers are, the people in his life, and contact them first, and maybe CC or BCC that email that is the direct contact, because that's how you'll actually get in touch with the individual.
All right. Thank you so much.
You got it. Great question.
Yeah.
I have a specific question regarding like mentorship and stuff like that. How would you ask someone to be your mentor?
Great question. So I think it depends on what you're looking for mentorship for. So Shraddha, if you don't mind, can you share with me in this ideal scenario, what is it that you're looking for mentorship in? Is it just general mentorship? Is it something that you're working on? Would love some context.
For sure. I'm part of this independent study class at my high school, and we're required to like find a professional. I'm doing architecture and sustainability, so I'm trying to find people in that realm, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, so this is a great question. I think mentorship always starts with a conversation. So I think similarly to all of these stories that I'm sharing today about getting an ask out there for all of these like quote unquote celebrities or high profile people, if I was reaching out to an individual to be my mentor, I wouldn't approach it the same way. I wouldn't have a cold ask or a cold email asking that individual to be my mentor right there on the spot. I think mentorship again goes back to the long game. So if there's someone in mind or someone that you want to network with, start that initial ask by asking for very specific advice instead of asking for mentorship, because for the individual on the other end, that might seem like a huge time commitment and they might say no. So get them on a phone call, ask them for even 15, 20 minutes to pick their brain, learn more about their expertise in XYZ fields, and position it that way. And then schedule a follow-up, do all of those other steps about following through, staying top of mind. And then hopefully after that third or fourth conversation, you can ask them to more formally be a mentor. But I would approach it more so from the long game perspective, if that's helpful.
Got you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Good luck, Shraddha. Keep me posted.
For sure.
Awesome.
Hi, I have a quick question.
Yeah, what's up?
So I was wondering, like, how do you find people around you to connect with? Like, because like I know like you can connect them through like the internet, but I was like thinking more in person.
Yeah, like local connections?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a great question, Selena. I'm also going to ask for a little bit more context on your end. Can you give me an example perhaps about what you would want to connect with that person for in that local connection?
Maybe like something like how do I, okay, so like business and finance, like something serious, but also something like you can relate on to like as a friend or something like that.
Love that. I think it's as easy as finding other local communities or groups that you can start joining. So obviously Beam is like a global, international, national network, same with the Conversationalist, but sometimes joining those larger organizations are the way to find people who live near you. There are probably so many people who live in your same town that are a part of these larger networks. So I would maybe start there, find groups that are of interest to you, maybe some finance communities, and start finding people who live in the same area as you, or perhaps go through your school. I found it to be super helpful. I went to the University of Pennsylvania, go Quakers, and I spent so much time looking at this resource that they have called QuakerNet, where you can see every alum that went to the university, what fields they're in, what jobs they've had. And I've connected with people who went to the same school as me, because that again establishes an initial connection. So maybe do some research on LinkedIn and some other Facebook communities, even though I'm not the biggest Facebook fan, but finding people who might live in your area who are in that field and asking them to coffee. You know, it doesn't have to be anything formal, but if they live in the same town, it's a great opportunity to build those face-to-face connections.
Oh, thank you so much. Because I was just thinking about like reaching out to some alumni from my school that are like in business school.
Amazing. Yes, that's the perfect place to start. And maybe even ask your school. They might know some people for you to reach out to, but definitely look at LinkedIn and do some research online. And you'll be so surprised with how many people in your area could be that connection for you.
Thank you so much
Hello.
for today.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Hi, my name is Lexi, and I was wondering how we can create like our own unique brand and really impact people upon first impressions, like in internships or a resume, or making like enticing people to keep a connection with you. Do you suggest like self-discovery or something more conventional?
Great question, Lexi. And I'm going to be honest, we would probably have to have a whole other session on personal branding, which I would be happy to do for Beam another time. But I think the best place to start is to actually go through the process that I went through with my mentor. So major, major, major plug. You're going to want to remember this name, Rich Keller. Rich Keller is the absolute expert personal branding guru who left his corporate job after 25 years to help young entrepreneurs discover who they are much faster than he did. So I went through his entire workbook and I worked with him to do that self-discovery journey through the lens of personal branding. And that's how I was able to uncover the fact that I am a unifier. It's something that was always there. It was a part of me, but I just didn't know it. And he really helped put it into that self-reflection framework. So look up Rich Keller. His website is therichkeller.com. He has an incredible workbook, and I would definitely recommend starting there.
Thank you so
I have a
much.
question.
Of course. Yeah, what's up, Victor?
Okay, so I'm kind of freaking out just a little bit because you're kind of doing what I want to do as a content creator. I do want to my own podcast, but it's going to be more social justice focused in terms of audio essays and connecting people to resources that help with the issue that I'm speaking on in that certain area. All of the questions, personal branding, thank that incredible resource. How would I find a mentor? Because I want you to be my mentor, kind of, because you're literally doing the same thing.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm honored, and that's so exciting. I can't wait to learn more about your podcast. I would say try to find some other people out there in the world who are doing something similar and see what they did. Maybe find someone who has a podcast or had a podcast once in a similar like thematic area from what you're producing, and maybe hop on the phone with them. And they don't have to be your mentor, but maybe pick their brain, see how they got started, what they wish that they would have known when they were just getting started, and that person could potentially become your mentor. But I would say maybe start there. Try to find people out there who are doing what you want to be doing and try to get your way into their life. It doesn't have to be, I think another big piece of advice that I wish that I would have known earlier is it doesn't always have to be the Dr. Oz's of the world. Like, we're so infatuated by these people who are out there who are celebrities and have blue check marks, but that's not it. Find someone who's out there doing something at the level that you want to get to next and treat it as a stepping stone. You know, like, you will get to that place one day, but try to network with the people who are a step above where you want to be and start there.
Thank you so much.
Of course, and good luck.
I also have a question.
Yeah, what's up, Megan?
So sorry. Hi, I'm Megan. I just wanted to ask, what are some tips you have for public speaking as a form of opening up to new people?
Great question. So public speaking, again, we could have a whole other conversation on public speaking, but I would say tip number one, know your audience. You know, really know what value you can give a very specific group of people or a person, and tailor your message or your story towards that audience. So for example, today, I knew that all of you who are Gen Zers, which is like literally my life, that you probably watched The Bachelor. So I wanted to give you all a story with something you could relate with. Whereas if I was giving this presentation to, you know, maybe the finance world with corporate executives who are many years older than me, maybe that example wouldn't resonate. So know your audience and know how to take your story and your message and not change it, but tailor it in a way that speaks to the people you're talking to, because the goal is you want the people you're speaking to see themselves in your story. And those are public speakers that really win.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
But I also have a question. It's Frank again.
Hey, Frank.
And I would basically, so you mentioned in, your talk that, that if you want to make a connection, have to provide for something. Well, how do you provide to people who are, like celebrities, like influential people? Like, how do you do that, or at least reach to that, to them in a ground to earth level? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that if
Great
you ever
question.
if you ever had any opportunity?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Frank. And it's something that is so person dependent, right? Like for me, I used to think, how on earth could I ever add value to someone like Dr. Oz? But it's all about how you can figure out what that person's goals are and see how you can take whatever expertise you have to get them there faster. So for me, that value is not monetary, like I mentioned, but I always offer a platform to spread their message that reaches the next generation. And oftentimes, the people who I'm reaching out to are people who have a message and are doing great things in the world. And I'm giving them a place to network and connect with young people to spread their message even further. And so I think it's all about aligning with Frank, what value you can bring to the table? What expertise do you have? What is something that you know that other people might not know? And finding people out there who might need that expertise and offering that to them. So, like the podcast example I gave, I started a podcast. I know all of the ins and outs, what equipment you need, how to get started. So, sometimes if I'm reaching out to a podcaster or someone who might want to start a podcast, maybe at the end of the call, I'll say, how can I best support you, Frank? For example, I love your story. I've started a podcast. If you ever need advice on how to get started, I can share any advice or expertise, but know yourself and what value you can bring and try to align it with that person that needs that value. I hope that helped. Frank, did that answer your question?
Yes, you answered my question.
Awesome. And again, at the end of the day, like, just simply by being yourself can be that value. I think we get so caught up in needing to be like the utmost expert, which can lead to a lot of imposter syndrome. I've been there. But even just asking that question, you'll know what that person needs. So in order to be that person that people need, you've got to know what they need at that moment. So never be afraid to ask.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll have time maybe for one more question if one more person wants to ask something, and then we'll go into our social media winners and stuff like that. So
there's a question in the chat that didn't get answered.
Yeah. What is it? Let me scroll.
Oh, it's kind of all the way up there now. Let me repeat it. Someone was like, what do you have any technical tips on getting started with making podcasts or creating YouTube videos or creating any sort of content with cameras and microphones and lights and stuff like that?
Stuff? Oh my gosh, Skylar, we need to host a content creation workshop, a personal branding workshop, and a public speaking workshop. I am here for you. But when it comes to starting content creation, I think, again, it goes back to this Rich Keller exercise. You've got to know who you are and what you want your message to be, because whatever content you create needs to be created from a lens that you're adding value to the viewer, the listener, or the person you're trying to impact. So you've got to know who you are. Once you know who you are, try to write down, whether it's on some Google Docs, notes on your phone, a piece of paper, like, what are some things that you've learned along the way throughout your life? Create content from your lived experiences. What are some stories? What are some lessons you've learned that relate back to that value you're trying to give the world? And start to create ideas for how you can create bite-sized content around those lived experiences to create value for your audience. So I think all of the technicalities, you can watch YouTube videos about what equipment to buy, how to start recording, but you've got to make sure that your content adds value. So picture your ideal listener, your ideal follower, that ideal person you want to be consuming that content, and speak directly to them. And even more so, ask them what they need. I did a ton of research before starting The Conversationalist, asking amazing young people like all of you, like, what are you looking for in a community? How can I add value to you? And channel those insights into the content that you're creating as well. So I hope that was helpful. If anyone has other questions, I'll try my best to get back to you. Feel free to reach out to me. And I tried really hard not to plug things during today's session because I hate talking about myself, but it would just be such an honor if any of you guys wanted to join The Conversationalist. The link is in my bio. Literally just tap it and you'll be welcomed with open arms with amazing young people who are just there to have conversations with you, process the world with you, and talk about the things that really matter in life from all points of view. And you'll be able to network and build relationships. So I would be honored, and I just can't wait to get to know all of you better. So Skylar, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with networking and answering everyone's questions. I can tell everyone had a great time. Everyone hype her up in the chat again before we get into our pictures and our social media competition winners. Oh my God, so much love.
Gonna verbally hype you up because that was amazing. I'm emailing you very soon. Please watch out.
Yes, thank you all so much.
I just want to bump Victory's thing, like go reach them out. I'm rooting for you guys.
Yes.
Thank
Oh my
you so
God,
much,
yeah.
Veronica. Can I take a screenshot to post on social of all of you guys?
Yeah, of course. So everyone, turn
Amazing.
on those cameras. Let's.
Yes, turn on those cameras. This is not
Yes, let's see
school,
those
y'all. Come
faces.
on.
We want to see those faces.
Yes, and I'll feature all of you on the conversationalist. So we're just waiting on Frank and Android One and Lexi. Only 3 more people without their cameras. Let's go.
We need a full screen there, and we'll do some of those basic poses. Like we've been doing
Yes.
hearts and like peace signs like this whole
Oh my
time. So if you guys
gosh.
have any other ideas, I really don't know what to do.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, Lexi, Android One, come on.
come
Oh,
on,
Lexi's camera
guys,
doesn't
almost
work.
there, almost there. One more.
Oh, Android One, we're counting on you.
Android One, pull through.
Oh man, Android One, you can't leave us hanging like this.
Let's go.
Okay, we'll
Kill
just take it anyway.
yourself.
Just
So
hide non-video participants.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Duh. Oh,
You can
perfect.
do that?
Okay.
Since when?
Wait, did it work on your end? Because I just hit
It did not, but I have to let go of the screenshot. So no matter what, everyone just smile. We'll take a first one. 1, 2, 3. So cute. And I don't know how to not display the non-video participants. So
The people that are like they don't have their camera on, just there's like a 3 dots there, and just click those 3 dots on the top and just
oh my gosh, Ahmad, that was so clutch.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. And we got some more people in the frame. Okay, so we'll do two screenshots to get people back and forth from both windows.
Want to do like a basic pose?
Yes, let's do a peace sign. Okay, everyone smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let me get the second screen because there are 2 screens. Okay, ready?
We'll do heart or something.
Yes. 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh, I can't. So cute. And then one more just smiling because we lost the first one with the non-video participants. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You guys are amazing. Don't become strangers. Skylar, I am so in awe of all that you do. You are such a legend. And I can't wait to get to know you all better. So hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. We're just gonna do one last thing. This fun thing that we do is we just put on a clip of a piece of music, and then when the beat drops, we all wave, and it's gonna be this cool video where we tag you all. So let's see. Let's do some Dua Lipa. I know y'all heard of her. So when the beat drops, I'm gonna tell y'all to wave, and then just wave. So give me a second. Hold on. Second. Hold on. Wave, hey! How to build your network and connections workshop. It's so hype in here. Look at the energy. Oh my god, thank y'all so much for coming. Hey, alrighty. So one last thing that we're gonna do with the drum rolls and everything is we're going to announce our social media competition winners. So let me just share my screen. And can someone give a drum roll, please? 3, 2, 1, and congratulations. We picked 5 winners to win some Beam stickers. Let's go. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, I'm very messy. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Sophie, for speaking with this amazing presentation, answering everyone's questions and interacting with the attendees. And we'll see you at our next workshops. So bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.
Free to go.
Hi, everyone.